So, the other day, me and Kate went out for a cocktail. We went to Etsy Bravo, which is a good cocktail bar here in Pullman, Washington, which I may have mentioned once or twice before. And we went there, and it was a little early in the evening, and there weren't many people there. In fact, it was me, Kate, and the bartender, who I did not know. Or at least I didn't think I knew him. We went there and we started chatting the way you do, and it turns out he's been living in Pullman for a long time, and it turns out, as I talked a little bit longer, that I knew his dad and his mum, and in fact he had seen me and Lysander playing badminton in the rec centre. He lives fairly close to Lysander's mum, around the corner, or he did when he lived with his mum and dad, and it was one of those small town stories where, you know, it's one of the things that's really cool about living in a small town. And anyway, we ordered our cocktails. I ordered one, it was a Patterson, and they did not have the ingredients. They included yellow chartreuse and other stuff. So I said, well, I said to Levi, that's his name, I said, well, is there anything you're working on or anything that's kind of like that? And he said, well, yeah, there's this cocktail I've been working on, and I'll make that for you. And he made it for me, and I'm going to make it tonight. It's called Monk's Death. He did not have a name for it at that moment in time. I have the recipe here on a sort of written bar. It was on a piece of receipt paper, actually. So Levi Vixie made this cocktail from Etsy Bravo, and I want to give full attribution to that cocktail. But it did also make me think a little bit about, you know, you get to meet people you know when you live in a small town, but it also turns out, even if you're not in a small town, you can still meet people. In fact, a word was coined, or a phrase, or whatever you want to call it, by my friend Guy many years ago. He said, Elgar, my last name's Elgar. He said, you can Elgar someone. To be Elgar'd is, he said, to encounter a harmless buffoon in the place you least expect to find him. And he came up with this title after many years ago. I was working very hard during the summer holidays at university, and then I travelled around Europe on an interrail pass. And on a whim, I decided to go to Istanbul, and I went to Istanbul station, and I arrived, I was like, what the hell am I doing here in Istanbul? So I didn't know what I was going to do, so I found myself a cheap hostel, and I decided to walk back to the train station to kind of orient myself. And there I just wandered into the station, and then there, I see someone say, Mum, hello, Guy. He says, oh, hello, Richard. What are you doing here? Oh, what are you doing here? Oh, let's go out and drink some beer, which we did rather successfully that night too. And ergo was born the name to, or the phrase to Elgar someone, which I have successfully done in other places as well. But anyway, Levi told me about this recipe he'd been working on it, but he didn't have a name for it. And after we talked about it for a while, we decided it would be, or he decided it was going to be called a Monk's Death. And it must have got its name for being a monk something or other, because one of the ingredients in it is Benedictine, famously made by monks in France for the original recipe back in the whatever 16th century or whatever it is. But let's get straight to making it now. It is a rye whiskey cocktail. He used 100% proof, or 100 proof rather, rye whiskey Rittenhouse. I'm using my go-to, which is 90 proof George Dickel rye whiskey. I tried this earlier, and it is in fact delicious. We need 1.5 ounces of that good stuff, and then a bit of sweet vermouth. I'm using Cinzano here, just a 1/2 ounce of that, and along with the rye whiskey, that is going into my mixing glass that is already conveniently filled with ice. Now it's the Benedictine, and I just want a 1/4 ounce of that. When he was making this, he was free pouring this stuff, and it was good, and I'm fairly confident in my own bartending abilities to be able to do the same. But I want to show to you here, and to myself, I guess, really, that I will measure to make the proportions right. We just need a 1/4 ounce of Benedictine, like so. And finally, to sort of round the whole thing up, because the complexity we're getting from the Benedictine, I'm going to put in a 1/4 ounce of maraschino liqueur. And again, I'm not going to free pour that. I'm going to measure it and keep the proportions perfectly, I hope, accurate. We're just going to stir this, and you want to make it nice and chilly. It's going to go over ice because that's the kind of drink this is. But you still want it cold. The dilution is everything. And in fact, I went out to make a special purchase purely to make this cocktail, and that was I bought myself an ice mold that makes those giant square ice cubes. I could, in theory, have got myself one of those things you stick in the freezer so that it freezes in enough directions to make it, not a clear ice cube, not cloudy at all. I didn't do that. I spent $11 in the Pullman building supply and got myself this mold, but I think it'll work very well. So you see that big ice cube there, like a 2-inch square ice cube. I'm going to put that into my double old-fashioned glass like that, which is the same kind of ice cube Levi used for the drink he made me. And I'm going to strain. Oh, I almost forgot the ingredient. I was just about to strain without the final ingredient. Some bitters, cardamom bitters. Wow, I can't believe I almost did that. Let's put a dash of cardamom bitters in there. And I'll now give that one final stir. That's going to make this nice and chilly. Now it's been sitting there in the ice so long while I talk. And then we are going to pour that onto my giant ice cube in my whiskey glass. Well, it's not really whiskey. It's a double old-fashioned glass. Well, an old-fashioned is a whiskey drink after all, so maybe it is a whiskey glass. And let's see what we've got. That's delicious. Cheers, Levi.